I want to show you guys some of the coolest things that I have found so far in my 1863 Cassell Publishing House Bible. And this is just a standard family holy Bible. So right off the bat, I found the chronology fascinating. I've never seen any modern Bible that has dates. This one lists the creation date as 4004 BC. Then these are the dates for the Old Testament that they have listed. I know that dates are debated. I just find this really, really cool that it lists it so openly. In Genesis, you have the sun, the moon. But what is this? And there's no explanation, but I really feel like this could possibly be like a representation of Polaris or something, because it just doesn't make sense otherwise. Why would there be the sun and the moon and then this in the middle, just like how Polaris is in the middle? I don't know. I'm not stating anything as fact. Let me know what you guys think, though. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. So after the creation of the earth, there's some notes and some pictures. Here is how the Egyptians thought of the universe, and here's how the Hindus did. But the notes are kind of puzzling. You guys have to let me know what you think. It says the ancient Egyptians symbolized the earth, as the engraving will show, by a personage with a green beard, covered with leaves and recumbent, and heaven by a goddess, forming a vault by her arched body, and sprinkled with stars, while two boats, one carrying the rising and the other the setting sun, traversed the heavens by skimming the surface of the goddess's body. I know that you guys are thinking what I'm thinking, and if you're not, SpaceX and the rockets hitting the firmament. In the center appears the god Maon, the divine intelligence, presiding over the equilibrium of the universe. The Hindus, as will appear from the companion engraving, represented the universe as supported by a turtle, the type of strength and conservative power which repose on the great serpent. With them, as with the ancient Egyptians, it was the emblem of eternity. The universe appears divided into three spheres. The superior one, the abode of the gods, little g, having 7 divisions, the intermediate region, the earth proper, and the lower region with 7 hells. Mount Meron, supposed to traverse and unite these 3 worlds, bears on its summit the radiant and mystic triangle, the symbol of the Creator. Some sages asserted the being of a god, others openly denied it. Some maintained the existence of many gods, others represented the deity as a corporal being necessarily united to matter and ruled by an inexorable fate. And hence, in Jehovah's great condescension and mercy, Moses was commissioned to go into the midst of the multitude of ignorant and erring men to reveal the fact that could have not otherwise been disclosed, that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and to trace the steps by which, after he had scattered the darkness that enveloped the world, he clothed its surface with a rich and varied vegetation, peopled the waters with fish innumerable, the air with birds, insects, and other winged creatures, the fields with ruminating cattle, the forest with the beasts of prey, and the plains with reptiles creeping on the ground. Man was called into being as an earthly image of the invisible God, the most beautiful hymn, as Clement says, to the praise of the deity, in the view of the angels and of those morning stars who at the creation sang together, and who, as sons of God, shouted for joy. This destroys the argument against the Nephilim. This is not the sons of Seth. This is angels. He exhibited the most illustrious divine attributes, knowledge, righteousness, holiness. He was the high priest of this rich and lovely world, and his morning and the evening psalm was as a sacrifice of adoration and thanksgiving for the entire earthly creation, amidst which he stood, not as a tyrant, but a wise, just, and benevolent sovereign. And now, God, surveying his works, which had reached their completion, pronounced them very good, that is, perfectly adapted to the accomplishment of his purposes. But this one shows Enoch, and the notes talk about him being translated or removed. The character of Enoch and the close of his earthly career are alike described in few but most impressive words. Moses says he walked with God. That is, he not only engaged, as we see by the engraving, in devotional acts, but to be spiritually minded was the ruling habit of his life. This entire consecration of himself to God prepared him for the important services he was commissioned to perform in instructing, comforting, and establishing the pious among his contemporaries, and also in testifying against the conduct of the wicked and forewarning them of the day of judgment. A very remarkable passage showing this occurs in the Epistle of Jude. Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. The judgment to come was therefore known and announced in this early age of the world. It is not Moses, but Jude, who informs us that this prophecy was delivered by Enoch, and had not the apostle been directed to record it, we might have doubted whether men were apprised of the judgment to come. One one inference may be deduced from this statement, namely that we are imperfectly acquainted with the degree of religious knowledge possessed by the antediluvians, and that it was greater than we should have supposed from the few particulars respecting them which have been transmitted to us by Moses. In addition, however, to the record of Enoch's faith and piety, of his prophetical office, and of his having this testimony that he pleased God, there is the unparalleled declaration, "He was not, for God took him," words which Paul explains by informing us that he was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. In the antediluvian world, it is manifest that great corruption of manners prevailed, and this state of things arose from unbelief, the entire disregard of God and eternal things by all, with the exception of a few preserved by divine grace, pure and faithful, while the rest were absorbed in their gains, pleasures, and iniquities. At this crisis, then, Jehovah was pleased to exempt Enoch from the operation of the general law of mortality, and to translate him to heaven, most probably in the presence of competent witnesses, as a proof to those who were left behind that there is an invisible world in which the righteous shall be rewarded, and consequently that there is a God who judges in the earth, and who will hereafter punish the impenitent workers of iniquity. I also personally had a hunch about this, so I thought this was so cool. I have always thought that like the doves referenced in the Bible were just standard pigeons for the most part. And just to clarify, the reason that I believe that is because I have been talking a lot about how the Northern Lights have to do with the Bible and God's throne room. And I saw a pigeon at one point and I was like, wow, those are the colors of the Northern Lights. So I personally just started associating them with that. I'm just clarifying that I'm not saying that this is like directly in scripture. This is just my personal belief. So I just found it really cool that it shows that it is just like a regular dove that you would see outside. I thought that was beautiful. I thought this was cool because it shows the pyramids of Egypt, and it has an extra one here, which is rumored to be a black pyramid. But I guess that like archaeologists that talk about it are blacklisted for whatever reason. I'm not sure on that one. I love this one because a while ago from the text, I was saying that it seemed as if Polaris is God's throne room. I know you guys are probably tired of me talking about it. I just think that it's really fascinating. It's my favorite topic. And that it sends out the Northern Lights, and that would also be Jacob's ladder, because the Northern Lights, they make noises, like they hiss and whisper, and like you can look it up, you'll find it yourself. But it actually seems to show that here, because this is showing Jacob's ladder, and here's God's throne. I know it's faint, it's because it's kind of faded out because this book is so old, but then the angels going out from the throne and going down to him. And then this illustration shows Egyptian women. I just thought it was like strange and kind of fascinating. I'm guessing that this is like a peacock on her head. Here's Moses on the mount and God like speaking through the cloud with the lightning bolts. I thought this was so cool. Here's the title page for the book of Leviticus. Look, Polaris, the throne room, sending out the light. And then here is the earthly tabernacle setup. Here's an illustration of Dagon, which I know a lot of people are probably going to find interesting. Rapture haters are going to be mad at this one. Elijah is literally floating up into the air, and it shows Elisha trying to stop him. Like, his cloak just falls to the ground. Like, exactly like what people make fun of us for. His clothes fall, and he just floats up into the air. I love how direct some of these illustrations are. The seraphim giving Isaiah the burning coal to purify him. Here's his vision of the chariots following Babylon's destruction. I found this super interesting too, because it shows an Egyptian here. Look at the head shape, Nephilim type. Philistine, same thing, Nephilim type head. Also notice the hat. Try to think of who religiously wears this type of hat. Mede or Persian, Ethiopian, and then a Libyan over here. Here is his vision of the temple. One of my favorites, Ezekiel's vision of the Lord's judgment on Jerusalem, also shows the sky triangle, Polaris, with beams of light coming out. I have more to show you guys, but this is getting really long, so I'm going to leave this one at that.